All right, welcome to the Manhattan GMAT Study Hall for January 21st. We've got three main topics for you today. Here they are. We are going to talk about parallelism, exact mechanical considerations. A lot of you have probably learned the parallelism from some kind of standpoint, but maybe not as exactly as you could. We're going to talk about ambiguous sentences, cleaning them up with helping verbs or prepositions, and we're going to talk about using comparisons in parallel sentences, specifically the use of this phrase, compare to or compare with. In any case, a reminder for a couple of you guys who have been submitting questions in various senses. When you submit questions, there's a couple of types of questions that we can't really answer. One of those is official guide problems. If a problem is only in the official guide, then we can't take it for reasons of copyright. Those problems are owned by GMAT, and since they sell them for a profit, fair use means we can't use them ourselves. However, GMAT prep software is also from GMAT, and those problems are okay to use because those problems are freely distributed at no cost, and so they don't make a profit, therefore they're fine with those being distributed. And if there is a question that happens to be in both the GMAT prep software and the OG, there are a few of those, especially in the verbal side, then those are also okay. But the problems that are not in GMAT prep and are only in OG, you can't use those. The other kind of question that you can't use is questions about individual advice or individual weaknesses. I mean, some of you have been emailing very personal questions into the study hall question submitting device. That's not okay. The best place to send those kinds of very private queries is the general folder on the forums. And then we usually turn those questions around in about a week. But in any case, these are the two kinds of things we actually can't answer these because we're not allowed to, the OG problems, and then it wouldn't make sense to answer these on a publicly attended study hall. So there you go. Okay, so is everybody ready to start? There's a smiley face icon over there on the left. Give me that if you are ready to get going. Okay, so first topic for today is mechanical considerations of parallelism. Because parallelism is a lot more mechanical than you might think at first. What we're going to touch on today mostly is the very, very systematic aspects of parallel structure. You probably already have a basic idea of what parallelism means and how it works, but today we're going to look at the systematic aspects. So here are 6 versions of the same sentence. I'm going to give you them one at a time and have you check off a green check or a red X as to whether you think those are correct. So you're going to find those options, green check, red X. Those options are located up in the top left of your screen. Okay, green check for each sentence if you think the sentence is okay. Red X if you do not think that it is okay. So here's the first one. Most fossils of species X were found in Tennessee or Kentucky. Okay, here's the second one. Most fossils of species X were found in Tennessee or in Kentucky. Again, green check or red X. Here's the third one. Most fossils of species X were found either in Tennessee or Kentucky. Here's the fourth one. Most fossils of species X were found either in Tennessee or in Kentucky. Two more, red X, green check. Most fossils of species X were found either in Tennessee or in Kentucky. Sorry, in either Tennessee or in Kentucky. And finally, this last one. Most fossils of species X were found in either Tennessee or Kentucky. Okay, so here's the results, and we're going to discuss this on the next page. These are more difficult, and a lot of you struggled with this, but the first two are actually both correct. And we're going to hit on the reasons over the next couple pages, but both of these two are correct. And then among the last four, this one is incorrect. This one is correct. This one is incorrect. And this one is correct. All right, so let's talk about why. In order to do this, we're going to uncover some very, very mechanical considerations that you may not have thought about. In particular for these first two, which are the most challenging for everybody. But we're going to go ahead and go through all four of these, all six of them. So, okay, we're going to look at the last four first. The last four are slightly easier for reasons we're going to discover here in a second. The basic mechanical principle of parallelism is you've got parallel structures indicated by parallel tags. Those are also known as signal words or markers. So, pardon that. Okay, those words should be covered up. Sorry. Okay, the signal words are the words that actually indicate that you are looking at a parallel structure. Okay, so they're the words that are telling you, hey, this structure is parallel. So go ahead, in the text box, indicate, in these four sentences, what are the signal words? What are the tags? Okay, so most of you are getting this. In this case, either and or are the tags. All right, the tags are the words that require parallel structures. In this case, if you see the either and the or, those are the two words that tell you that you are dealing with parallel structures. A couple of you said in. In is not a parallel structure. In is just a preposition. You can use in contexts that do not use parallelism at all. Like I put the box in the trash. But if you see an either and an or, then that's automatically a parallel structure, whatever is with either and whatever is with or. So here's the basic mechanical principle behind parallelism. Okay, here's the tags. The tags are here. Here's the either, 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 or, or. Okay, those are your tags. Here's the way it works. The basic principle is the words that follow these tags are automatically included in the parallel structures. Those are automatically all of those words. You are not allowed to omit any of those words from the parallel structure. So you cannot omit words that follow one of these tags. They're all counted as part of the parallel structure, and this is what helps you differentiate. So, for instance, this is a tag, or there is a tag, and then what are the words that, or word or words that follows that tag? Go ahead and type in the text box. So that tag is followed by Kentucky, just Kentucky. But then this is a tag, and what are the word or words that follows that tag, indicating the text box? That tag is followed by in Tennessee. All right. So notice that these are not parallel constructions. This is a prepositional phrase here. These following words are a prepositional phrase, and that's just a noun. That's in Tennessee, that's just Kentucky, and you're not allowed to ignore this instance of the word in. So these are not parallel, and therefore this whole construction is incorrect. Okay, everybody give me the smiley face if that makes sense. Okay, now if you look at the second one, here are our tags again. This is a tag. This is another tag. Again, you just look at the words that follow the tag. Alright, so these are following words. These are following words. So this is in Kentucky. This is in Tennessee. Those are parallel. This is a prepositional phrase, and that's also a prepositional phrase. So these are correct. These are parallel constructions. So this whole idea is correct. Okay. Does this make sense? Smiley face icon over there. These make sense. Okay, so we'll look at these two other ones just real quick with the same principles. The tags, again, are either or. So if you look at this example, following either and following or. Following or, you have in Kentucky. Following either, you have just Tennessee. Again, this is a prepositional phrase. This is just a noun. Those are not parallel. So this whole construction is incorrect. And then finally, you have these two tags. Following or, you have Kentucky, which is just a noun. Following either, you have Tennessee, which is also a noun. They're both places where fossils are found. Noun, noun. So this is parallel. It's correct. Okay, any questions about this particular slide? Okay, now, if you notice over here, we had these two which were a little bit more on the difficult side. All right, these were both correct, and most of you indicated that one or the other. A couple of you even indicated that both of them were wrong. These are a little bit different. Okay, in this case, the difference is what are the parallel tags in these two sentences? What word is the tag that indicates parallelism here? Go ahead and type in the text box. Okay, the word that indicates parallelism, a couple of you are indicating this. The word that indicates parallelism in these cases is or. Just or. Now this is a different kind of animal because unlike, see in this problem you have a tag in front of everything. You have two things that are parallel. You have the two places where these fossils are found. And you have two tags. You have an either and you have an or. So you know exactly where to look for everything. In this case it's a little bit different because you only have a single tag. In this case, in other words, the first part of the parallel structure is not marked. So these are more difficult, but unfortunately they also include the two most common tags that exist, which are and or. Those are the two most common types of tags. So here's the way you've got to do this. Remember that the rule here is that the words that follow tags are automatically included. Now, if you look at these constructions, you've got two parts that are parallel. You have the Tennessee part and the Kentucky part. But only one of these actually follows a tag. So what you've got to do is and this is very counterintuitive, but you're going to have to reason from right to left in your analysis. This is very important. Because the right part is tagged, and the left part is not tagged. This is extremely, extremely important because you can't tell where the left part begins. Because only the right-hand part is tagged. So what you do is you look at the words following the tag. These words, no matter what they are, those words are the right-hand parallel structure. So in this first instance in the text box, what word or words is the right-hand parallel structure? Go ahead and type in the text box. Okay, the right-hand parallel structure is just Kentucky. So again, the reason being, this is your parallel tag, and then this is the following construction. It's just a noun. Just a noun. So now, here's what's different. What's different is, in these examples, you had an either and an or, and those were basically telling you where to go. They're basically telling you where to look. Here you don't have that. Here you don't have an either over here that's bossing you around and telling you where to look. In fact, what you can do is you can start the other half of the parallel structure wherever you want in order to make it the same type of grammar. So if this is just Kentucky, then what word or words do we need over here to be parallel to that? Yeah. So you've got, if this is just Kentucky, which is just a noun, then you need something else that's just a noun, and there's another place over here. So you can just decide to start your parallel structure right there. Notice that's not an option here. When you have an either and an or, you just have to start the structure wherever it tells you to. But here, you can just pick off that much of it and say this, right here, Tennessee or Kentucky, this is my parallel structure. In this case, what is the right-hand parallel structure in this sentence? What is tagged by or in this sentence, indicated in the text box? Okay, in this part, the right-hand parallel structure is in Kentucky. Again, you have to count all of those words because they follow the tag, because they follow or. So, in this case, this is a prepositional phrase. Prepositional phrase. So you need to find something else parallel to that over here. Which words on the left are parallel to that? Go ahead and indicate in the text box. Yeah, so the words that we need over here are in Tennessee. So then we have in Kentucky, in Tennessee. So again, we can just sort of arbitrarily say that this much now is our parallel structure. You can do that. Again, if it's just and, or just or just but, or just something else that's one tag only, then you can absolutely start your parallel construction anywhere you want. If those words are anywhere on the left, then you're good. So notice again, you absolutely must analyze the construction from right to left. So for those of you who marked one of these as wrong, one of these first two, if you marked one of these first two as wrong, then what you were trying to do is you were trying to randomly start on the left. You can't do that. You can't start on the left here because you have no idea what on the left is part of the parallel construction and what's not. Whereas here, right to left, you're good to go. Okay, give me the smiley face icons if you guys are ready to go to the next one. So again, both of these are correct. That is correct. This is also correct. Smiley face icon if you guys are ready to proceed. Okay. Next, here are three more examples. I want to eat fish and chips, drink Mountain Dew, and go to sleep. All right, let's say that this is number 1, number 2, and number 3. So go ahead and indicate in the text box. Instead of doing green checks and red X's this time, let's just do it in the text box. In the text box, please indicate which of these three that you think are properly parallel. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Who knows what the tags are in this construction? Go ahead and type in the text box. In these lists of three things, what are the tags? Okay, the tags are, if you've got a list of 3 or more things, the commas and the and, which is what you guys are mostly indicating in the text box. Comma and is a tag, and the comma by itself is also a tag, this comma. So again, this is a tag, this is also a tag. And last but not least, this is a tag, and this is also a tag. So let's just go ahead and run through the analysis of these. Again, proceeding right to left, because that's the way we always go. This is just go to sleep. This is just drink Mountain Dew. Again, you don't have a choice in the matter. And then if you go to the left, go ahead and type in the text box which words are parallel to these two things. Can you find words that are parallel, and if so, which words are those? Okay. Yeah, the words that are parallel here are just eat fish and chips. Because again, if you look at the words that are indicated in the parallel constructions, this is a verb, this is a verb, and that's a verb. So that's your parallel construction. Again, you can ignore the 2 because there's no left-hand signal telling you where to start. So this construction is absolutely correct. Okay. Next, let's look at the parallel constructions. This is I want to go to sleep, but that's just drink Mountain Dew. And again, since both of these are tagged, you cannot ignore or omit any of these words. So these 2 constructions are not parallel. Smiley face icon if you guys understand this stuff. That's just drink Mountain Dew, that's a verb. And this is I want to go to sleep, which is an entire clause with the subject and everything. So overall, this construction is incorrect. The last one, it's a little bit awkward. Okay, this is not the most beautiful thing in the world, but we're not concerned with awkwardness right now. We're just concerned with parallelism and grammatical correctness. So if you highlight the parts that are parallel here, this is to go to sleep. This is to drink Mountain Dew. Everybody indicate in the text box how much of this on the left is parallel to those other 2 things. Okay, so you guys are indicating this. The part on the left that's parallel is to eat fish and chips. And again, if you like naming stuff, this is an infinitive. This is also an infinitive. And so is this. So your parallel construction this time is this entire thing. And this is considered correct. Again, this time, you have, as you did before, you have a choice of where to start the leftmost part here. Okay, if you want to, you can exclude the 2 here, and you can include the 2 here. It really doesn't make any difference at all. You have your choice. Because there's, unlike these latter 2 parts, which are hemmed in by these tags, the left-hand part has no tags, so you can just choose to begin the left-hand part of this parallel structure wherever you want. Any questions? Okay. All right, so let's look at some more examples. Let's get around to some real problems, some real examples. So try this one right here. This is from GMAT Prep. It's also in OG. But this is a problem that we're allowed to use because it does also appear in the GMAT Prep software. So here's this one. Again, this problem is from GMAT Prep. It also appears in the OG. Okay, I'll put a timer on the screen. I'll change your polling to A through E choices. So I'll put those up on the top. You've got choices visible on the top now. In the same place where you had your green check and your red X before, now you have A through E multiple choices. So I'll put a timer on the screen. Please don't type your answer in the text box. Go ahead and indicate when time runs out. There you go. Okay, that's the end of the timer. If you have not picked an answer, please go ahead and pick one. Okay, so here are the answers that you guys picked. So we were kind of all over the place on this one. Every answer was indicated by somebody except B. And there's actually a consensus of an incorrect answer here. The consensus answer here, or sorry, there's a consensus on the correct answer, but it's a very, very dim consensus. It's no more than 7 out of 25 people picked anything. So we're definitely going to have some learning occurring here. In any case, let me help you narrow these down, because not all of these have parallel structures in them. So I'll point out pronouns are not the focus of today's class, so I'll just point this out in passing so that we can get to the parallelism. But notice this split between sloths and the sloth. That's a pronoun issue. If you notice the pronouns in the problem, and we've treated pronouns in a couple of previous study halls and also in our class, this is a singular pronoun. Since that's a singular pronoun, and you know in context, the only thing here that has a coat and has toes is definitely singular, sloth. So you've got to have the word sloth somewhere in the sentence. Okay, A through E don't say sloth singular anywhere. So A through C are incorrect. You've got to have the sloth. Okay, smiley face if you guys are okay with that. Again, the deal is you've got a singular pronoun, it. You've got to indicate sloth in the singular because it's the singular sloth that has a coat and has toes. So these first three choices are all gone because those all contain a plural noun. This is plural, this is plural, and this is also plural. Okay, on the other hand, these are okay because as required, this is singular, and so is that. All right. Now, let's take a look at the parallel structures in this case. In this case, we've got, let's take a look at E first. What are the tags in E? Go ahead and indicate in the text box which words in E are the parallel tags. Okay, in E, the parallel tags are, there's a list of 3 items again. So as we said on this slide, the commas and the and are tags. So same as here, this E at least tries to have a list of 3 parallel items. So comma and is a tag. This comma is a tag. So just for clarity purposes, we'll go ahead and show that tag in 2 pieces. So that's a tag, and comma and is a tag. So let's take a look at the structures that are made parallel here. Well, if you look following this tag, that's it moves. Sorry, wrong color. Okay, I've been using orange for parallel structures. This is it moves. It's a subject, and it's also a verb. That's blocked in, that's tagged, you can't omit any of those. But this is just sleeps. So that's not going to fly. This is just a verb. But this is a verb with a subject. So these 2 constructions are absolutely not parallel to each other. So that is enough to actually eliminate that answer choice. So this is gone. And this is very common. It's just the lack of a single, it's a single extra word in there that kills it. But it's done. Okay, there are a couple other errors in there. For instance, this is a poor idiom. Enough that. You're not allowed to say infrequently, enough that this occurs. That's just an incorrect idiom. But whether you know that is purely a matter of memorization. This, though, is very systematic. You find the tags, Following this tag is it moves. Following this tag is just sleeps. Those are not parallel. Is everybody okay with that? Smiling face if you are. Okay. Now, if you look at D, a couple of you are saying, hey, wait a minute, what about D? Because you're looking at hangs, sleeping, moving. Here's the deal with D. In D, all three of these are not supposed to be parallel. All right, so we'll come back to this sentence in a second. Here are some analogies to this. Okay. Remember that modifiers don't have to be parallel to the main action. So in this construction, Joe ran down the street, flapping his arms wildly. This is a perfectly valid sentence construction. Give me the smiley face if you've seen this type of construction before. Okay, now what's happening here is that this is a modifier. It's a comma plus ing modifier, which is a type of construction that we've treated in previous study halls. Comma plus ing. And then this part here is the main clause. And in particular, this verb is the verb of the main clause. Notice that since this is the main verb and this is a modifier, those don't have to be parallel, and in almost all instances are not parallel. All right, so smiley face if you understand this sentence and if you understand the construction of the sentence with the comma ing modifier. Okay, so here's another example. Joe ran down the street, flapping his arms wildly and screaming at the top of his lungs. In this case, this much of it is still a comma plus ing modifier. So this is still a comma plus ing. But the difference is, here's still the main clause. But now you have a two-part modifier. That's a parallel tag. This is a participle, and this is another participle. That's a modifier. Within this modifier, you've got two constructions that are parallel to each other. But they're not, again, as with the top example, they're not parallel to this because they're not supposed to be. This is a modifier, and that's the main clause. So smiley face if this overall construction makes sense to you. Okay, so if you go back and look at this, this is the same construction. It's precisely the same sort of thing going on. This is a comma plus ing modifier. Same type of modifier we just saw. So within that modifier, we have a smaller parallel structure. Here's your tag. This is and. And then within that, you have moving and sleeping. It's only two items that are parallel. And those are perfectly parallel. Moving, sleeping. By contrast, this first part is the main clause. The sloth hangs from trees by its long, rubbery limbs. Just like Joe ran down the street, this is the main clause. It doesn't have to be parallel to anything. And as long as we're at it, there's one more clue in here that this is not a list of three things. Does anybody know what that is? Does anybody know how you can definitely tell that this is not supposed to be a list of three things? Okay, yeah, a couple of you are saying this. It's because there's no comma. Right? This is one thing on the GMAT. If you have a list of 3 or more things, you must have a comma before the final and. Right? In other words, if you have this x, comma, y, and z, this is not a list of 3 items. Okay. If anything, this is going to be the kind of construction that we had up here, where the last 2 together, the y and the z, are just a modifier. On the other hand, this is how you make lists of 3. X, comma, y, comma, and z. Okay, this is how the GMAT always will do it. All right, this is not how this is one of those things that's not universal throughout the English language. So it's extremely important that you know the GMAT does it this way. But British usage does this. Some rogue outposts of American English do this. But in GMAT land, this is the only acceptable way to write a list of 3 items. Any questions? So again, that's another way that you could tell, looking at this problem, that you were not actually dealing with a list of 3, that it's just main action modifier. Okay, let's move on to another problem, this is from GMAT Prep. Give this one a shot. Same sort of deal. I'll go ahead and clear out your answers, and I'll give you some time. Okay, timer's run out. Go ahead and indicate answers, please, if you don't have any answers yet. Again, the choices are in the upper left-hand corner of the screen, the same location where you found those green checks and red X's previously. Okay, let's take a look. This one very much depends upon parallel structures. What are the parallel tags in these examples? Everybody indicate, please, in the text box. What are the parallel tags? Okay, yeah, the parallel tags are either or. I mean, again, either or is not the only parallel tag in the world. But, I mean, it also happens to be the one that we use in all those examples with Kentucky and Tennessee. But it's a good illustration. This is a 2-part tag. So you've got either and you've got or. Now, again, we want to analyze these things from right to left. Okay, what is, in all of these examples, because it's not underlined, what is the right-hand part of the parallel structure? Go ahead and indicate, please, in the text box. Okay, yeah, the right-hand part of the parallel structure, let's go ahead and change all of these to the color we've been using, which is orange. Okay, the right-hand part of each of these parallel structures is this: conducted electrical impulses, in which case blah, 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 blah. So again, we've been coloring these in orange, so let's change to that. So, in particular, this is a past tense verb, and then other stuff. So definitely we need something else that starts with a verb. This is a verb. So, in A through C, cells is the beginning of this. This is a subject and a verb. Cells secreted. That's not okay. Just We don't want that, because those are not grammatically parallel structures. Cells secreted is not parallel to just conducted. So all three of these are incorrect, because they're all trying to make a verb parallel to something that is not a verb. So we can instantly kill those. Again, and once you get used to doing this, you can get some pretty fast eliminations. It's really nice. In this case, the left-hand structure, go ahead and indicate in the text box what is the left-hand structure in D&E. Okay, yeah, you guys are starting to indicate. It's secreted hormones. That is another verb. It even has the same tense. So this is perfect parallel structure. Now, long story short, I'll go ahead and tell you the story with the rest of this problem. The story with the rest of this problem, there are two errors in E. The first error is this modifier right here. Okay, this is an incorrect use of which. This is a which modifier. We did talk about that in one of our earlier editions of the study hall. This gives the wrong meaning. Because you guys know the word which automatically applies to whatever noun is right here. So this modifier incorrectly states, this modifier taken literally, this means that the hormones cause these cells to be endocrine cells. Okay, this is not true. Because if you say which made them, you're saying the hormones made these things endocrine cells. We need to underline this, don't we? Okay. So there should be an underline. Sorry about the lack of underline here. This part is underlined. Okay. Sorry about that. So, according to this, you've got hormones made them endocrine cells. That would literally mean that the hormones caused them to become endocrine cells, and that doesn't make sense, because they would have to be endocrine cells already to be hormones. So, okay. Does that make sense? Smiley face if that makes sense. Okay. Notice you've got perfect parallel structure here, though. You've got they secreted hormones, comma, in which case this other stuff happens, or conducted electrical impulses, in which case this other stuff happens. I know how perfect the parallelism is here. Conducted, verb, object, comma, in which case, blah, 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 blah. Left-hand part is verb, object, comma, in which case, blah, 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 blah. It's perfect. Yeah. This is about as good as it's going to get. Okay, this is absolutely 100% perfect parallelism. Okay, now, notice a couple of facts here. The first fact, which is a little bit disheartening at first, but the first fact is that not all parallelism is this perfect. But if you encounter parallelism that is this perfect, then you should definitely pick it. So again, we're going to see a couple of examples a little bit later that have somewhat less perfect parallelism than this. But this is as good as it's going to get. Verb, object, in which case, blah, 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 and verb, object, in which case, blah, 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 blah. And that's as good as it's going to get. Okay, smiley face if this makes sense, and then we'll move on to some more examples of parallelism. Okay. Alright, so give this a shot. Okay, we're looking at some more examples here. These are not a problem just yet, just parallel structures. When you do this, again, remember to read parallel structures from right to left. 3 examples here. Go ahead and indicate in the text box, please. Which of these do you think are properly parallel? Go ahead and put the numbers in the text box of the ones that you think are parallel. Give you a little bit to look at this. Okay, so let's take a look at these. You got some various answers here. Actually, all 3 of these are parallel. Let's take a look why. In the text box, go ahead and indicate what is the parallel tag. In this case, what word functions as a tag? Okay, yeah, most of you guys are indicating the tag word in this case is but. If you have x but y, then the 2 things on either side of but, the x and the y, have to be parallel. So this is your tag. That right there is your tag. Now again, right to left, the part on the right is automatically part of the structure. So the right-hand thing here is that is poisonous for dogs. How much of this would you take on the left? Yeah, you would take the part that starts with that is. So you have 2 that clauses. You just take this much of it and say, this is my parallel structure. And so that works. In number 2, let's kind of speed it up a little bit. We can do smiley faces at the end just to make sure you're following. So this one starts with a verb talking about food. So is poisonous for dogs, so you just take this much of the left-hand part. Again, you have the freedom to start the left-hand part wherever you want. So you do that. So there's your parallel structure here. Then here, poisonous for dogs, that's an adjective describing the food. So you go find the other adjective. Nutritious for cats, but poisonous for dogs. So that, this time, this is your entire parallel structure. So in this case, all 3 of them are parallel. All 3 of them work. Again, you cannot, this is further illustration of why you have to analyze these kinds of things from right to left and not the other way around. If you try to analyze these things left to right, not happen. Because if you did, you would never know where to start this part of the parallelism. You have to start here and then work your way over there. Any questions? Okay, now take a look at these 4. Again, decide, label in the text box which of these you think are properly parallel. I'll give you about a minute to take a look at them. Okay, so some of you have graciously pointed out to me that numbers 1 and 4 are the same. So hopefully nobody has indicated that. I mean, hopefully nobody picked number 1, but not number 4. Or pick number 4 but not number 1, because that would be bad. Turns out that number 4 and 1 are exactly the same. Yeah, just testing you guys. Okay, so in this case, what is the tag? Go ahead and indicate, please, what is the tag? In the text box. Yeah, the tag is and. Okay. So there's the tag, and that appears in local ritual. So let's analyze number 1, which is also the same as number 4. That's a that clause. All right, let's type that in. This is a that subordinate clause. And the function of that, just as importantly, remember when you talk about parallel grammar, you're mostly talking about what do these things do. This is a modifier of hand signs. So you need to find another subordinate clause that modifies hand signs. Here you can find one that has pretty much exactly the same structure. That is this one. So here's your overall parallel structure. That native use and that appear in local rituals. So this one is correct. Smiley face if that makes sense. So since okay, good. So number 4 is the same as number 1, so that means number 4 is also correct. Okay. How about that? Number 2. A couple of you indicated that you thought this was correct. This is not correct. Let's look at why. This is appear in local rituals. Let's take a look at this. This word here, this is a verb. This is a verb whose subject is hand signs. Okay, now what you've got to do, because remember with parallel structures, they've got to be grammatically parallel, but they've got to have the same function. They've got to be doing the same thing in the sentence. So the trick here is you got to find another verb over there that's doing the same sort of thing. The problem is the only verb over here is appear. The only verb over there is use. The only verb on the left is use. Use is not parallel to appear. If you don't see why that is, try writing native use and appear. This won't work. In other words, this is the wrong subject. This is something that natives do. This is something that hand signs do. So you can't say natives use and appear. You can't have two verbs with different subjects trying to find in parallel. So there's nothing that is parallel to the right-hand part. So this is incorrect. Okay, everybody give me a smiley face if that makes sense. Okay, again, some of you are giving me the not-so-smiley face here. This is appear in local rituals. This is a verb, but again, it's got to be grammatically doing the same thing. So you need a verb, because nothing else can be a verb. See, if you have adjectives and adverbs, those are a little more flexible, as we're about to see. Because you can have clauses and such that act like adjectives, and you can also have clauses and such that act like adverbs. But verbs, you can't replace verbs with anything else. Like a verb is just a verb. You can't take out a verb and put in something else. So you got to look for another verb. Here's use, but use is not, I mean, natives don't appear, but natives use. So you can't put these in parallel. You would have to have separate subject for these to be parallel. Okay, smiley face if that makes sense, especially the original questioner. If that makes sense, give me a smiley face. Okay, now number 3 is going to make some of you guys mad. This is appearing in local rituals, and this is used by natives. Okay, this appearing, that's what's called a participle. It's a present participle. If you guys are into grammar, it's a participial phrase. But the point is that this is used as an adjective describing hand signs. Now, this is also another participial phrase. The difference is that this is what's called a past participle. But it's still a participle. And more importantly, it is still being used in the same way. It's also used as an adjective. And it's also describing hand signs. Hand signs used by natives, hand signs appearing in local rituals. These are absolutely parallel. You can put them in the same parts. You can use either one by itself and it still works. Hand signs used by natives, hand signs appearing in local rituals. They're both participles. This is called a past participle and this is called a present participle, but this is still considered parallel. This is modeled after an OG problem. I know this makes some of you mad, but number 3 is a lot like OG 12, number 42. This is also in the 11th edition OG. It's number 19. In the 10th edition OG, if any of you are still hanging on to that one, it's number 210. All right, the reference is that it describes a mushroom spawn and extending. Okay, I can't quote the whole problem here because that would be a violation of fair use. But if you go look up this problem, they use spawned is just like used, and they use extending is just like appearing. So, this is actually a nice segue into our next topic, which is non-perfect parallelism. Because everything we've shown you so far is totally textbook perfect parallel structures. All right, this thing you're looking at, number 3 here, this is correct. It's just like an official problem that is also correct. This is the first example you've really seen, though, of constructions that are parallel even though they don't match absolutely perfectly. So, you know, the ones we looked at before, these are all perfectly parallel. And all the other examples we also saw were perfectly parallel. So, the question is, what about when they're not? So not all parallel structures have perfectly matching components. So here's an example in which they don't. They argue just as frequently and about the same topics as the couple living next door. In this case, your parallel tag is still and. But let me show you what the parallel structures are. That's the right-hand one. Remember, you go from right to left. About the same topics. The left-hand parallel construction is just as frequent. Now, see, frequently is an adverb. Alright, so this is an adverb, and it modifies, this is an adverb that's being used to modify the verb argue. Now, you may think this is not quite parallel here, because there's no literal adverb hanging around over here. But this is a prepositional phrase that is used as an adverb. Modifying argue. So these are parallel. I mean, this is as good as you're going to get. I mean, this is not perfect parallelism, but you can't make this any better. Because there's no way to make this a prepositional phrase. You can't say with the same frequency, because that wouldn't mean the same thing. There's also no adverb that means this. There's no such word as, like, about the same topics lead. So you can't do that either. So you're stuck with just as frequently and about the same topics. Okay. Another test for parallelism, though, with and. Okay. If you have and or, then the parallel structures should still make sense by themselves. Okay, so for instance, another piece of evidence that this sentence is okay is if you say they argue just as frequently as the couple next door, that's fine. In other words, if you get rid of this one. And they argue about the same topics, that's also fine. Same thing with this other controversial one over here. Hand signs used by natives, that's fine. Hand signs appearing in local rituals, that is also fine. Okay, the only exception to this little rule of thumb is if you have between, because then you need to have both. You can't just say between X by itself, because you have to be between two things. But otherwise, you can check parallelism by seeing what happens if you just have one of these. Okay, smiley face if that makes sense to you. Okay, so here's the deal. I mean, in case this is scaring you, most parallelism on the official problems is not imperfect like this. This is definitely imperfect parallelism, but most parallelism that you will see is not imperfect. Most of it is perfect. On the other hand, if you are looking for some of the highest scores, you're going to have to familiarize yourself with this kind of stuff. So if you are hunting for the highest scores on this exam, then if you do see imperfect parallelism like this, make sure to get a takeaway. Make sure that you know the form. Remember the form of the imperfect parallelism that you saw. So remember what this looks like. Remember what that looks like. These are legit. Okay, also, this is not just made up at random. There is an official problem that is structured like this one. It's on the diagnostic test. It's SC number 46. Okay, it's in either the 11th or 12th edition, OG. The diagnostic test is not the regular sentence correction part. This is the diagnostic test, which is found in the front of the official guide. So be aware of this. Okay, let's do a problem. Take a look at this problem. I'll give you some time. Go for it. Time's up, sorry. Go ahead and indicate an answer, please, if you have not yet done so. Okay, let's take a look at this one. There are only parallel structures in two choices here, but here are those two choices. The ones that have and is a parallel tag. So if you look at this, that's the right-hand part of this parallel structure that North Americans are exposed to. This is the right-hand part of this one. Now in C, the parallelism in C is all right, because this is a that clause, and this is another that clause. And they both modify dioxins. Okay, so this is, let's mark it, this is a that clause modifying dioxins. And this is a that clause modifying dioxins. So that makes sense. This, though, this is a new subject. And this is a verb. And then dioxins is an object here. The problem is there's nothing over here that's parallel to that. So nothing over here has an analogous construction. Over on the left, can't find anything parallel to this construction over here. So that's incorrect because it lacks parallel structure. All right. Smiley face if that makes sense so far. Okay, now let me just give you a quick rundown of what's wrong with the other incorrect answers. These are tangents, but still worth looking at. Here's the deal. Here's some additional considerations that you should know. One thing is that you're not allowed to end modifiers with prepositions. Okay, for instance, these are incorrect. You can't say the restaurant that we ate at, and you can't say the person I spoke with. Right? Instead, the correct versions of these, instead of saying the restaurant we ate at or the restaurant that we ate at, you have to say the restaurant at which we ate. Then instead of saying the person I spoke with, you would have to say the person with whom I spoke. You got to memorize this. So that consideration is actually enough to eliminate a couple of answers here. Because you're not allowed to say in the text box what modifier in here has this sort of incorrect construction. Yeah, a couple of you are indicating this. You cannot say that North Americans are exposed to. So that's enough to eliminate B and C. And actually D. D is already gone, but D is double gone now. So for blue reasons, we can also eliminate B, C, and D. All right, and then A and E, this is also a tangent, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. But to distinguish between A and E, you go to this one, much versus many. Dioxins are countable, 1 dioxin, 2 dioxin, 3 dioxins, 10,000 dioxins. So you have to use many. All right, much is for uncountable things. Many is for countable things. So dioxins are countable, so you can't say much. Therefore, that's enough to eliminate A, as well as double eliminating B and C. Okay. The main point here, though, is the orange stuff doesn't play a huge role in this problem, but still, it's good to be aware of. On a smiley face if you're okay with this. Okay. New topic. We've got chance to have, there were two more topics left on that. There were two more topics left on that syllabus that we had to start. One of those was helping verbs and optional prepositions. We're not going to be able to get to that today, so we're going to defer that to the next study hall. But the topic that we are going to get to today is usage of compared to and compared with. Okay. Now the first thing I want to emphasize is that there is no difference at all between these two. Okay, this is going to contradict the advice in our older strategy guides, but there is not a functional difference between these two things. So, no difference at all. If you can say compare to, you can also say compare with. If you cannot say compare to, you cannot say compare with either. Okay, smiley face if everybody understands this advice. Okay, yes, it contradicts what we've said in our earlier strategy guides. Make sure you know it. Okay, now what you should know is this. Okay, here's how you use it. If you present statistics with these things, you do not include any other words of comparison. So if you say twice as much compared to, that's wrong. You don't do that. It's just twice as much as. If you say more or less compared to, that's also incorrect. Okay, so this should just be twice as much as. And then this should just be more or less than. Okay, etc. It's always incorrect to use compared to or compared with in conjunction with these things. The way that you're supposed to use it is like this. 28% of American husbands were married to wives with more years of schooling, compared to only 6% in 1971. Okay, notice you just present the numbers. You're not saying more, you're not saying less, you're not saying greater than, less than, this many times, double, half. You're not saying any of that stuff. You're just saying 28% and 6%. Okay, in fact, in an ideal usage, you would just say, only here would work, but you could also just say compared to 6%. Okay, smiley face if this construction makes sense. Notice you just present the statistics. You don't say anything mathematical at all. No greater, no less, no twice, no half, none of that stuff. Good? Okay, so here's a problem. Go ahead and give this a shot. Okay. Give you a timer. Go for it. All right. So in the text box, yeah, most of you have this correct, so let's just take a quick look at it. The correct usage here is E. Notice that E is a picture-perfect usage of compared, like we said. You just present the statistics. The two statistics are 35% and 20%. So that needs to be the comparison. 35% of the population compared with 20%. There it is. I'll give you a quick rundown of what's wrong with the other choices. The big wrong here, make sure you know that this is big wrong. Okay, when you use comparisons like this, when you use compared to or compared with, you should make sure that you actually compare the quantities that are supposed to be compared. Okay, so in this case, in the case of this problem, you're comparing the percentages. In this problem, those quantities are 35% and 20%. Those are the quantities that are actually under comparison here. The problem with choice B is that it makes the wrong comparison. Choice B makes it sound like you're actually comparing the years to each other. Okay, also, there's a little wordiness, also as compared to is undesirable. You'd rather just have just compared to or just compared with. Okay, just makes sense. Smiley face if that makes sense. Okay, again, you guys are pretty good at this. Here's the statistics from this problem. Most of you got it correct, especially because this none here, this includes moderators and stuff who are just watching the action. So you guys did a good job on this. Quick rundown of why the other ones are wrong. A is wrong because of this. Okay, this is a really, really, really big deal. If you take this literally, which you have to, by the way, when you say when, that means like this has a causal effect. Like if you say taken literally, this means that this statistic is only true when it is actually being compared to the other one. Okay, in other words, if you say this happens when this happens, you're actually saying that you have to make this comparison for that to be true. It's kind of like saying I wake up when my alarm clock rings. So the alarm clock has to ring for me to wake up. So this is really not so hot. Smiley face if that makes sense. Okay. This one this is a misuse of a comma plus ing modifier. All right, this is a misused comma plus ing modifier. Comma ing modifiers are a pretty complicated issue. We've gone over that in one of our previous editions of the study hall. But that is something that you can check in on with class session number 6 in the recordings if you need to. And then finally, this one, there's two things wrong here. The first thing is that unlike compares to the subject of the preceding clause. So this means that this group is unlike 2000. This makes no sense. This is a rule that you should know. The word unlike means a comparison with the subject. And then also with 20% is not idiomatic and doesn't make sense. Okay, any questions here? All right, let me just throw one more problem at you. We'll just discuss this one. I just want to show you this really quickly without analyzing the entire thing, just analyzing the parts here that are incorrect. Right, this just with compared to. This problem is an example of an incorrect or redundant usage of compared to. Okay, we're not going through this whole problem. Just wanted to point out to you, this is twice. You can eliminate two choices based on that. Twice as much compared to. As we said before, you don't say both of those. You either just give the numbers and say compared to, or you say twice as much as. Same thing here, you can't say twice compared to. This is also redundant. Okay, we're not going to go through the rest of this problem, but the answer here is D. This problem is on our forums if you want to see the rest of what's wrong with it. But the illustration here is just the compared to. So, okay. Any questions? I guess we can go through the rest of this just real quickly. Some other things wrong here. This annually is in the wrong place. Notice here you've got the pollution emitted annually is twice as much annually. That's two annuallys in the same part. Okay, so this is redundant for a different reason. Notice annually is in the correct answer as well. The correct answer here is D. But D has annually in a good place. You've got parallel structures. Now let's mark those really quickly. Remember, comparisons involve parallel structures. The first part of the comparison is the total amount of pollutant emitted annually by these guys. This is the total amount of pollutant emitted annually by those guys. This is perfect. Perfect parallelism. Again, stuff emitted annually by these things, stuff emitted annually by those things. Doesn't get any better than that. This, not parallel. Which is being emitted? There are at least two problems here. The first is the way this verb is written is not parallel. Non-parallel construction. And then also you don't use which without a comma. So that leaves us with D. But the main point of this problem, which is the last problem we're going to do today, but the main point of it is for you to knock out these red things. So at least if that much makes sense, we're good to go. Okay, we're out of time. We're actually well over time here, so we're going to cut it. If you have any super quick questions, I'll go ahead and take those. Otherwise, thank you for attending, and hopefully I will see you again in a couple of weeks.